Hey guys, it's Obi, as always. Today we're going to go on a bit of a hype trip. Avengers Infinity War releases on May 4th of this year, and it's going to be massive. It's slated to feature an enormous roster of characters and ties together close to everything and everyone introduced so far in the MCU. So you could be forgiven for feeling a little overwhelmed with remembering the last time and state you saw all of it in. I was having trouble myself. So, I decided to make a neat little video series that will bring together all the information you need to know going into Infinity War to be up to speed. As a little recap, I'm going to be covering all the Infinity Stones and all the characters slated to appear in Infinity War. In this first video, we're going to be covering those little things that are going to drive the central conflict of Infinity War, the Infinity Stones. First of all, let's make sure we're clear on just what exactly an Infinity Stone is, and do a little review. According to the Collector, the Infinity Stones were 6 different singularities existing before the beginning of the universe. Once the universe was created, they were scattered. The stones, which could be remolded only by powerful beings, were first used by the Celestials, who used them to grant their race unknowable power and dominate several planets. At some point, the Celestials lost control of the stones, and they fell into the hands of other races, such as the Asgardians and the Dark Elves. There are 6 stones, each one granting power over a different aspect of the universe. These are as follows: power, time, space, soul, reality, and mind. So far, we've only been introduced to 5 of these in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as the Soul Stone has yet to be introduced. Now, let's get into each stone's effect and last known status. First up, we have the Power Stone. Encased in an artifact called the Orb, probably to contain its power, the Power Stone was introduced in 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy. The Power Stone, as seen in the MCU, has the power to destroy any living material to come into contact with it, and can be theorized to contain a limitless amount of raw power, to the point that anyone to touch it that isn't strong enough to withstand the level of power it imparts is violently destroyed. This is best seen when the Collector's slave girl Karina attempted to grab it to escape slavery under him and proceeded to explode and decimate his collection. All of the Guardians working together, minus Groot, were able to contain the power enough to use it to defeat Ronan the Accuser, but seemed to lose some stability the longer they held it. So even with the 4 of them working together, they may not be able to contain its power for very long. The last time we saw the Power Stone, the Guardians left it in the care of the Nova Corps on Xandar. Next, we have the Time Stone. In the MCU, the Time Stone resides within the Eye of Agamotto, a locket created by an ancient sorcerer named Agamotto, that was in the possession of the Masters of the Mystic Arts, specifically in their primary sanctum in Kamar-Taj. The stone was introduced in 2016's Doctor Strange, when Stephen Strange used it to reverse the damage Caecilius caused to Hong Kong and locked Dormammu in a time loop in order to force him to leave Earth alone. The Time Stone, as you might gather from the name, grants its bearer power over time, allowing them to manipulate the timeline, move themselves back and forth through time, or create never-ending time loops until they decide to release them, just to name a few functions. If you've ever seen a movie or read a book involving time travel, you probably have a decent idea of the kind of shenanigans the Time Stone could create. At the end of Doctor Strange, we see Strange return the Eye of Agamotto to Kamar-Taj, with Wong remarking upon the wisdom of keeping it there so as not to have an Infinity Stone moving about the world. However, 1 year later, when we see Strange in Thor Ragnarok, he is once again wearing the eye when he addresses Thor and Loki's presence on Earth. Whether he was just wearing it temporarily as a safety precaution or has taken to wearing it more permanently remains to be seen. Following the Time Stone, we have the Space Stone. Out of all the stones in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this is the one we have the most thorough background on. In the MCU, the Space Stone takes the form of the Tesseract, which was first introduced in Captain America: The First Avenger back in 2011. It can be used as a potential source of infinite energy, which can be utilized to open portals to different parts of the universe and even different dimensions. Originally, it was given to Odin, Thor's father, for safekeeping, and for some reason he decided to leave it on Earth. During World War II, Red Skull and Hydra found the Tesseract and decided to have their head scientist, Arnim Zola, experiment with it in order to create new, more powerful weapons to use against the Allies. They built a highly advanced plane meant to assault the US, using the Tesseract as a power source, but Captain America stopped them and crashed the plane, freezing himself and allowing for his eventual return in the modern day. At this time, S.H.I.E.L.D. recovered the Tesseract and kept it in storage for quite a while, until eventually Nick Fury requested Dr. Erik Selvig to experiment with it in an attempt to harness its potential for unlimited energy. During this time, the Tesseract acted up and opened a portal that Loki used to travel to the Earth and begin his campaign to recover the Tesseract for the Chitauri's master, Thanos, in exchange for being lent the Chitauri as an invasion force to conquer Earth. He used the Tesseract to open a wormhole over New York and transport the Chitauri, but the Avengers managed to beat back the invading force and close the wormhole, leaving Loki in their custody. Afterwards, Thor used the power of the Tesseract to transport his brother and himself back to Asgard, where the Tesseract was kept in Odin's vault once more. It remained there until 2017's Thor Ragnarok, where Loki came across it once more whilst reviving Surtur in order to stop Hela. It's not shown, but it is implied that Loki decides to take the Tesseract along with him as they leave Asgard. Following the film's credits, we see Thanos' ship appear in front of Thor's, further implying that Loki took the Tesseract, as we know Thanos is searching for the Infinity Stones. Following the Tesseract, we have the Reality Stone, which in the MCU takes the form of the Ether. This stone was introduced in 2013's Thor the Dark World, where the Dark Elf Malekith attempted to make use of it to plunge the Nine Realms back into an era of darkness so that he could rebuild it all as an empire of Svartalfheim, the Dark Elf Kingdom. Unlike the other stones, this one seemingly takes a liquid form, which will be interesting come time for Infinity War, as the stone will have to somehow take a solid form in order to be placed onto Thanos' Infinity Gauntlet, but more on that later. Obviously, Thor defeats Malekith and stops his attempt to reshape the Nine Realms in his image using the power of the Reality Stone, and it's taken back to Asgard for safekeeping, much like the Tesseract. However, two Asgardians, Sif and Volstagg, decided that it was unsafe to have both the Tesseract and the Ether in such close proximity to each other, and took it to the Collector, that guy from Guardians of the Galaxy we talked about back in the Power Stone section. Seeing as how, chronologically, Thor the Dark World took place a year before the events of Guardians of the Galaxy, we can assume that the Collector was in possession of the Ether when the Power Stone blew up his collection. And no further information has been given about the Ether's whereabouts since, so it's safest to assume that the Collector still has his hands on it for the time being, but where he's keeping it is anyone's guess. The final stone in the lineup is the Mind Stone. The Mind Stone has played a very important role specifically in the Avengers line of films of the MCU, and has catalyzed a number of events very quickly. The Mind Stone's capabilities are quite varied and not entirely well explained, as we see quite a few different things develop from its presence. As the name implies, it has control over people's minds. While it was in Loki's scepter, tapping it to a person's chest would mind control them, making them loyal to him until something caused their state of consciousness to change, such as being knocked out, or the scepter was destroyed. Later, the scepter was used in experiments by Baron Wolfgang von Strucker to imbue powers into the Maximoff twins, Pietro and Wanda, who became Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, respectively. How the stone managed to give speed powers to Pietro remains unexplained, but Wanda's powers make a little more sense, as she still retains the power to mind control people to a certain extent, showing them their greatest fears, as well as seemingly retaining a certain level of power over the stone itself, aside from her more general psychokinetic powers. We also see the Mind Stone affect artificial intelligences as well, as Tony Stark and Bruce Banner use the scepter to imbue sentience into Ultron. Ultron then breaks the scepter to extract the stone itself, and it's used in a similar manner to create the Vision from Tony's Jarvis AI, binding it to a physical body that Ultron created from vibranium, as well as offering access to advanced knowledge and an assortment of other powers such as flight, density manipulation, and energy blasts. The Mind Stone first appeared in the Avengers back in 2012 when Loki wielded it inside his scepter. Following this, it made its next appearance in Avengers Age of Ultron in 2015, still inside Loki's scepter until Ultron broke it free and it became a part of Vision. The Mind Stone has remained affixed to Vision's forehead through Captain America Civil War and up to now. Now you might be wondering how all these Infinity Stones are going to factor into Infinity War. Aside from the fact that they're all powerful artifacts in and of themselves, controlling all the Infinity Stones at once allows power over the very fabric of reality, more or less. Thanos, the main antagonist in Infinity War, will be attempting to collect all of them so he can effectively be able to control reality. To facilitate this, he will be utilizing the Infinity Gauntlet, as I mentioned earlier. We don't know a lot about the Infinity Gauntlet in the MCU, only that it can contain the Infinity Stones. Marvel is most likely saving a more in-depth explanation of the Infinity Gauntlet for the film proper. However, one interesting tidbit in the MCU about the Infinity Gauntlet is that they have actually shown us two, one for the right hand and one for the left hand. The right-handed one was shown in Odin's vault on Asgard as far back as the first Thor film in 2011, but Hela dismisses it as just a poor replica in Thor Ragnarok, while Thanos is in possession of the true left-handed version. Just anecdotally speaking, a strangely disproportionate amount of cartoonists and comic book artists are actually left-handed, and this is a movie series based on comic books. Do you think it's a coincidence that the left-handed gauntlet is the true version of the Infinity Gauntlet? Let me know what you think in the comments. So, there's the recap for all the Infinity Stones that have been introduced up to this point in the MCU. Hopefully you have a slightly better understanding of what's coming down the pipe as we rocket towards Infinity War's May 4th release date. But, as I said in the beginning, this is just the start of a short series. Next up, we're going to start in on all the characters that are slated to appear in Infinity War. And there are so many, I'm going to have to split that video into multiple parts too. So expect a video covering all the characters from Phase 1 of the MCU appearing in Infinity War sometime soon. That being said, thank you so much for watching. If you think this content is worthy of a subscription, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and if you don't, leave a comment letting me know what I can do better so I can entice you to subscribe in the future. And until I see you again, stay safe and have fun.